So this is a review of a YouTube series, ELT Training by Gakonga. I've not done a lot of reviewing of other YouTube series on this channel yet, but it's something I want to branch out into. In addition to reviewing books and movies, I'd like to review the various podcasts that I listen to, the radio series, and some of the YouTube channels that I watch or listen to. It makes up a fair amount of my media consumption, so I think it makes just as much sense to review it as anything else I watch. Okay, so anyways, this is ELT Training by Gakonga, and that ELT stands for English Language Teacher. So this is for people who teach English, and I think primarily aimed at people who teach English abroad as a second language. So you know, people who go to China or Japan to teach English. It's of interest to me because that's what I'm currently doing. That's my job. If you're not involved in teaching English as a second language, this is not going to be of interest to you. You can skip this video safely. Yeah, I'm going to give some brief background as to how I found these videos and why they were of interest to me. I had recently completed the Delta, and as a result of that, was brought on board on a teacher training program. It was not the CELTA, but it was a CELTA equivalent, and I was working with two other instructors who had been CELTA instructors for years and years and years, and were using the standard CELTA method and the standard CELTA training. And then there was me. You know, I did the CELTA way back when. I vaguely remembered some of it. I knew how to teach fairly well, you know, on a good day at least, but I had no idea how to train another teacher. I had some idea, I had some experience, but I don't want to sell myself too short, but there was a big gap. You know, even some of the CELTA method, I had gotten a little bit rusty on myself over the years, so needed to bone up on that, which I think is fairly common for new teacher trainers. You might have to go back as some of the basics that you've not been practicing yourself and solidify your base. Anyways, there was a need to kind of go back and bone up on these basics, these CELTA 101 basics. And that's why these videos by Gakonga appealed to me. I don't remember how I stumbled upon them. The YouTube algorithm, or maybe I was searching for something, I don't remember. But as soon as I saw them, these were like gold to me. These were exactly what I was looking for. So, Gakonga at ELT Training, the videos do range. So some of them are pitched at teacher trainers, some of them are pitched at experienced teachers, but by far I think most of them are pitched at new teachers on a CELTA course. And Gakonga herself was a CELTA trainer for years, and I believe is now a CELTA assessor, meaning she goes around and assesses other CELTA courses. So she knows the CELTA style backwards and forwards, and you can tell from her videos. So she's got a lot of videos on the basics, like a video on the phonemic chart, a video on concept checking questions, a video on analyzing grammar, and some very CELTA specific stuff, like how to do your CELTA assignment number 1, for example. The majority of which are pitched at new teachers, and it's not explicit in all of them, although it's explicit in some of them. But the idea seems to be that somebody who is going to do a CELTA course or is on a CELTA course would benefit from watching these videos at home in preparation for the course. And then in some videos she makes this explicit. She talks about, you know, the flipped classroom model. So this is like a flipped CELTA. So you can watch these videos at home, and then these will give you the necessary information that you will need on the CELTA. Now, of course, if you're doing the CELTA, you're going to get this necessary information anyways, but the CELTA is notorious for being very intensive. So much information in just 4 weeks. So it's probably going to be beneficial to people to either watch these videos before they start the CELTA, or review these videos at home while they're doing the CELTA, or try and get a head start on the stuff that's going to be coming up next week in the CELTA. But I found them incredibly useful as a new teacher trainer, to not only brush up on the basics myself, but to get a fairly good idea of what information exactly I needed to convey to the new trainees. One of the problems with having taught for so many years is you forget what somebody doesn't know when they're coming in as a new trainee. I think this is a truism for kind of any profession, but boy, was this true for me. I was new myself, but I had just no idea all the stuff that they didn't know, all the stuff I just took for granted after years and years of teaching, that somebody fresh off the street as a new trainee didn't know. So all of that is a long way of saying that these videos would be very useful to anyone in my situation as a new teacher trainer, and they would be very useful to anyone as a new teacher. I think they'd be useful for anyone as a new teacher regardless, but they'd be especially useful if you're doing the CELTA. So, I don't know who out there is watching this video, but if anybody watching this video by chance has signed up for a CELTA course but hasn't started it yet, like you're starting a CELTA course next month, oh boy, do I recommend these videos for you. Now I've got a whole playlist I put together. I'll link to the playlist in the video description. Just go to the video description, click on the playlist. If you're already signed up for the CELTA but haven't started it yet, you could not do yourself a bigger favor than watching these videos. It was interesting to watch because as part of my training as a teacher trainer, I had to watch some more experienced CELTA trainers do their input sessions first, and then I took notes so that I could do it next. But it was interesting watching Gakonga's videos because so many of the things in her videos were almost exactly the same as what I saw the experienced CELTA trainers do, even to the point of some of the example sentences being the same. I don't think they've watched her videos. I attribute this maybe just to these being very common examples on CELTA courses or within CELTA trainers. But yeah, it's just classic. It was exactly what the experienced CELTA trainers were doing was in her videos. So her stuff on concept checking questions, her stuff on intonation and stress, what else was there? Just right down through the line, it was the same. Now, because I'm a bit of a completist, I just put everything I could find by Gakonga on this playlist, even going as far as to dig up her second channel, which seems to have been a rough draft for her current channel, her ELT training. I also put on the playlist an interview she did with TOEFLology, just because I thought it was interesting. TOEFLology is another very useful YouTube channel / podcast. I'll talk about them on another day when I get around to it. Right, what was I talking about? I think maybe I've said everything I wanted to say. Point being, these Gakonga videos will be incredibly useful to somebody on the CELTA, and it's preferable that you watch them before the CELTA starts. Because once that CELTA starts, you're going to be so stressed and you're not going to have a lot of time you'd be doing you have such a huge head start on the CELTA if you were to watch these videos ahead of time. They'll also be very useful for new teacher trainers like myself who want to bone up on the basics, first of all, but also to get some sort of idea of what you need to convey to a new teacher. And they'd also be useful for an experienced teacher. And again, the level that the video is pitched at is different. Some of them are Basics 101, and some of them are, ideas for continuing professional development. Some of her ideas on exploiting a text, or some of her ideas on reading lessons, would be useful even for a more experienced teacher, and I include myself in that because I thought, oh yeah, that would be an interesting idea. Some of the stuff actually on the playlist is not so useful, or it's not so, at least it's not so general. For example, how to make a class website. Well, that's very useful if you're going to make a class website. I've got no plans with any of my current classes to make a class website anytime soon. So that one wasn't so useful for me. I watched the whole thing anyways, just because I'm a completist. I want to watch the whole thing before I give a review of it. But, yeah, if you're not a completist, you can pick and choose which ones will be useful for you. Oh, another thing I've also found these videos useful for, as working as a senior teacher in the school. If I know a teacher after an observation, if I can see they're struggling with a particular thing, like I see they're struggling with concept checking questions, or I see they're struggling with giving feedback, well, sure enough, Joe Gakonga has a video on it. So I can just send them the video and they can watch it at home. And that made a really useful way for me to assign professional development actions as a senior teacher. Yeah, the volume on some of these videos is not great. So, and again, it varies. But for whatever reason, for some of them, the microphone level is not turned up enough, or I don't know. So for some of them, I found it beneficial to listen to with headphones on. For some of them, the volume was not a problem. My own way that I listen to them, if I was doing an input session on something in the teacher training, I would listen to that video intensively with like my full attention before doing it. But otherwise, I'd had this playlist and I would just circulate this in the background in the apartment. So, while I'm cleaning up after dinner, I'll put on the Joe Gakonga playlist, the ELT training playlist. As always, when something's on in the background, you're only half giving it your attention. But you are giving it some level of attention, and it would go in one ear and out the other, but I would tune into it on and off while it was playing, and I pick up a lot of useful stuff just by doing that. You don't pick up everything, obviously, as anytime you're doing a podcast or an audiobook or something like that. Your attention is somewhat sacrificed, but you pick up a lot. And it was useful for me just having this playlist on in the background, and I did the whole thing a few times through, which I like to do whenever I'm doing anything by audio. Like if I'm doing a podcast or an audio book, I don't just listen to it once, I listen to it 2 or 3 times. And I think picked up most of it that way. And yeah, lots of useful stuff that I just picked up that will pop up every now and again. So, yeah, I don't know. You can listen to it however you want to listen to it, but I found it useful to do it that way. Just have it on in the background, go through the whole playlist a few different times, pick up most of the important points. I think it's a useful way to brush up even for an experienced teacher. Anyways, I'm rambling and I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to stop the video here.